Today's video, we'll be looking at the Dell Dimension L series of computers, and specifically the Dell Dimension L433c.
We review all technology from games to old PCs, and don't forget the toys. All get electronics, we cover it all.
So I recently picked this machine up at a swap meet, where I find a lot of my machines for a pretty good deal. And it was interesting to me because usually when I see these Dell Dimension computers, they're considered sort of higher end computers. You can even find them with like Voodoos inside them and TNT2 Ultras and things like that. They're usually sort of high end, and I always really like them for Windows 98 builds. But I actually had never come across one of these smaller sort of mid-tower ones. I thought it was an interesting, these Dell Dimensions to me always have like nice and interesting cases. And I was pretty excited about this machine, and then I looked down here and then I seen this sticker, Intel inside Celeron. So this is kind of like, I guess this was kind of like the budget machine of the Dell Dimension line. It has the Celeron. Obviously the Celeron was like a lower tier to the Pentium. It was more of a budget CPU. But I figured we'd take a look at this computer, see how it ran, and then see if we could do a couple little upgrades and see if we can get it running or performing any better. So the first thing you could tell is this is a little bit smaller of a case than a normal Dell Dimension that you come across. A little bit more limited with expansion capabilities. This one only has one 5¼ inch bay, and then it kind of has one of these floppy disk bays kind of molded into the case, and then it has one bay here that you could probably install another floppy drive or a zip drive or something like that. Right now I have the hard drive installed here. Not much else. I mean, it's got a little bit of that Dell Dimension case flare, a little bit of a rounded top here, which I'm not crazy about. It makes it a little harder if you want to put something on top of it. Again, I don't really like these when the disk drive bay is like molded into the case. You usually have to use the specific floppy drives with certain buttons on them. But this one, I don't know, it's okay. Got a nice big round power button here. The power LED is actually on the power button. Kind of cool. Hard drive activity LED right here. And then of course the badging. And then we have a Celeron sticker. And I think this is a design for NT and 98. That fits in right there. So I don't really know what the L and the C stand for. I believe the C stands for Celeron. I don't know about the L, maybe low cost line. 433 is going to be the speed of the processor, so 433 megahertz, and then C is the Celeron. Now, this is a Celeron-based, as we said, that's what the C designates. Now, I do believe in the L series, there are Pentium-based ones, and I believe instead of a C, there's an R, that it's regular, like Pentium-based. I think this is like a little event right here. The other thing, unfortunately, about this machine is actually when I picked it up, there was no CD drive. And, well, watch this. Unfortunately, this machine uses drive rails, and I actually don't have the right rails, so it's a little annoying. So if you do pick one of these up, and like me, you don't have the, it's like missing drives, and it doesn't have any rails, you can put the drives in it, but they're kind of like loose and floaty, and I really hate it, but it's all I can do for right now until I can come across some drive rails that will fit. So taking a look at the back of this machine, again, nothing spectacular here. We have a standard 3-prong power connector, and then we have our built-in I/O, pretty standard keyboard and mouse, 2 USB, 1.X, I don't know, it's probably 1.2, I'm not 100% sure on that, parallel port for probably a printer, 1 serial port, and then we actually do have built-in VGA. So if we look down here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 expansion slots. This one doesn't even have a cover on it. This looks like a Sound Blaster Live. I don't know if that's what this came with. I've seen another one of these that had one of those um, creative like PCI audio cards. I think that's what it called, PCI audio or Sound Blaster PCI or something. I really dislike them. I think they're pretty terrible sound cards. I believe they're originally like an Ensoniq PCI sound card, and then Creative bought them out and rebranded them. I've seen these machines with those cards in there, so I don't know if this live card, maybe the previous user replaced that and put in the live card. And then we have here, looks like an Ethernet or a modem card right there. So yeah, that's the back. Not anything spectacular back there. So let's open this guy up and take a look inside. Now opening it's pretty easy. See this little knob tab thing here on the back? You just pull it back, and then the side just comes right off. So very nice, toolless. I do like that. And here's a look at the inside of the case. A little bit cramped. As you can see, both the hard drive and my CD drive are just kind of loose in there because, like I said again, they're supposed to be rails that you screw onto the side of the drives and then slide them in. Sometimes in these, they'll have extra like rails like on the inside the case maybe, but I don't see anything in this guy, so they're just kind of free floating for now. This power supply looks like there's some kind of mechanism for it to like move out of the way, like it's on some kind of lever or something. I have not been able to figure that out, and I actually haven't even been able to find documentation on this, like a user manual. So I'm guessing there's a way that this kind of like you pull something and it kind of like moves out of the way, because the CPU is located underneath that. I still got to figure that out. Yeah, standard Dell with the weird aux power supply thingy. So you either need like a I think they're like semi-proprietary. You can get little adapters. You can like use a regular power supply and then get an adapter, I believe. But yeah, that's typical Dell, where I think they tried to do like a proprietary power supply thing. So you have this stupid, annoying kind of aux power connector. Other than that, it's pretty standard. IDE and floppy connectors down there. Here, only 2 slots for your RAM. I believe it's PC 100, and I believe the maximum is 512 megabytes, which is fine for Windows 98, maybe even a little overkill. I think these are 264 megabyte sticks. I think there's 128 in there. So if we do upgrades, I'll see if I can upgrade that. No AGP unless the onboard is AGP. So this has an 810 chipset in it. Now the 810 chipset should be usable with 66 megahertz front side bus and 100 megahertz front side bus. But I've been reading conflicting things online that it's sort of locked to 66 megahertz front side bus. I don't know. I've had mixed reports of people being able to upgrade the Celeron. I would even think, like off the bat, I think maybe you could even put in a 100 megahertz front side bus Pentium, but I think there might be a voltage difference there. That might not work. But as for putting in a faster Celeron, when I'm looking on the internet, I found like conflicting claims. I've seen some people say they were able to do it with success, and some people couldn't. It might have something to do with maybe a BIOS update. So I don't know. We'll look into that. I'm not really. I might have a 533 megahertz Celeron that would work in this machine, but I'm not 100% sure. Then again, here's the sound card. It is indeed a live, and here's that other card. I think it's an Ethernet card. Like I said, no AGP slot. The onboard, the 810 onboard integrated video, that might be on an AGP bus. I'm not sure, but if you don't want to use that, you're going to be stuck with PCI. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, just 4 PCI slots. Again, this isn't really optimal for a build. A lot of people, when they want to build like a retro PC, they want like an AGP slot, so they have like a plethora of cards they can choose from, or like a 16-bit ISA slot if you want to turn this into like a fast DOS machine. This has neither. This just has PCI. PCI is fine. You can work with it. There's a lot of cards in the PCI form factor, but yeah, that is kind of a sign that this was kind of more budgety when you don't have your AGP slot, and again, you don't even have a 16-bit ISA slot for if you want to turn this into a nice, get higher compatibility with a DOS build. But looks like a regular CMOS battery down there. Just a bunch of random chips. So there's the CPU. Like I said, it's a little hard to see, so I'm gonna see if I can get this power supply out of the way. And then we'll just do some benchmarks, and then I'll go straight into seeing what little upgrades we can do, and then do some more benchmarks and see how it compares. Probably put in a PCI video card. I have a few I can choose from, so yeah, we'll try that and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so actually pulling this up and out of the way is actually deceptively simple. This little green tab here, you just move it back, and then you just kind of move this little tab back, and then you lift up. Okay, and here we have the motherboard exposed with the power supply out of the way. Here we have that Sound Blaster live card, so it is model CT4830, right there. And yeah, so everything looks decent. These caps look decent. I have powered this up, and it did power up and post fine, but the caps do look okay. Here is our CPU under a standard heat-sinked fan. Here is our 810 chipset, although I believe there might have been different revisions of this, and I believe this is probably like an early revision of the 810 chipset. So I don't know, maybe that's why it has issues with CPUs that run on 100 megahertz frontside bus. I don't know. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to like test that and try different CPUs, or if I'm just going to stick with what we have here, but I don't know. We'll see as this video goes along. Again, here's the RAM. Let me see here, because I think this has 128 in it. And let's see, what's this say here? Oh no, this is a 256 stick. So that's 256 megabytes. I could have sworn it had like much less than that. And what's this one? Of course, mismatched RAM. And then here's the other stick of RAM, mismatched, of course. I think this might be 64 megabytes. So maybe there's 300 and something. 256 plus 64. I'm not very good with numbers. 300 and something megabytes of RAM in there, which is pretty decent for Windows 98. Not much else. We got like a standard coin battery there, piezo speaker right here, bunch of chips. Well, let's fire it up, do some benchmarks, and then we'll do some minor upgrade. We'll do some upgrades, and we'll see what kind of results we get then. So here is our post screen. Now, if you'll notice, the BIOS version is A02. I believe the most up-to-date version is A05. And generally, I always encourage and suggest updating your machine to the latest BIOS. I didn't in the case of this machine because so far it's been running stable. I haven't had any issues with it. And reading some stuff online, there was a couple people that reported that after updating it, I believe to A03, or no, A04 and 5, they started having some issues with the memory, and their machine wasn't like seeing like higher density RAM sticks. I could have tested that and updated it to the latest BIOS, but really everything was running fine for me, and I didn't really want to tempt fate too much, so I didn't update the BIOS in the case of this machine. But again, I would strongly recommend you always update your BIOS. I was just being a little lazy and also a little maybe overcautious, and it was running fine with this BIOS, so I just didn't feel the need at this point. But again, I always recommend you update your BIOS to the latest version. So here's a quick look at Power Strip. Now, it didn't allow me to click any of these options, so it actually didn't allow me to disable the VSync. So we're not running with a disabled VSync here. So first, I just did a couple quick benchmarks. My usual, I did 3D Mark 99 and 2000. And I was actually kind of impressed by the results from the integrated chipset. I usually kind of write off integrated chipsets unless they're like very specific, chips that from discrete cards that I know of. But anyways, for the Intel integrated chipsets, like on this 810 chipset, I've always kind of written it off. But actually using it here, it actually performed pretty decently. I mean, I don't know if I would recommend it over, just getting a good like discrete video card, but I found it to be quite adequate. I didn't see a lot of like glitches, although there's one later that we'll look at real quick. But again, in the small handful of games and benchmarks I ran, I didn't see any major issues with it, and it seemed to operate, okay. It's pretty adequate for an integrated, video chipset. Expendables seem to run pretty well. We're running it here at 800 by 600 16-bit color mode. I think the FPS average was about like 26 FPS. That's not bad. It's not great. It's not silky smooth, but it's decent for just having an integrated chipset built in with your computer. So not too bad. Although I did notice when you start hitting higher resolutions above 800 by 600, as we saw in the previous benchmark with 3D Mark 2000s, it does start to bog down there. So I think it does pretty decent with lower, like 800 by 600 resolution, but when you start upping the res over that, it starts to bog down. But at this color depth and resolution, Expendable ran pretty okay. Sub 30 FPS, but still playable, I'd say. And here we have Forsaken. And going in here, 8-bit paletted textures do show up, so it seems that the integrated chipset does support 8-bit paletted or paletized textures. At least it's an option in Forsaken it lets you choose. So again, I played this game in 800 by 600 16-bit color depth. I also did play it in 1024 by 768 16-bit color depth just to compare. It runs adequately at 800 by 600. It does okay. Also remember here we're working with a Celeron, so again, this isn't a high performance system as it's set up between like the CPU and the integrated video. So this is basically what like a stock system, not high end, would be doing. And again, it really maintained FPS kind of, it flirted between like 50 and 60 FPS at 800 by 600, but certainly quite playable, certainly looked fine. Again, when we up the res to 1024 by 768, that did drop quite a bit. We are averaging more, I believe, around like 30 FPS, give or take. Again, still perfectly playable, but we did see a noticeable drop in performance as the resolution increased. I was a bit curious, and I wanted to see how this integrated chipset handled fog tables. So I did play Shadows of the Empire, 800 by 600 by 16 colors. I tried to enforce the fog table, but when you start the game, of course you get the error, no fog table emulation found or something like that. All the FMV screens and like cutscenes, I guess, were the graphics were all garbled and goofed up. I've seen this before with certain cards. I don't know what it is with this game, and it's like cutscenes or the FMV scenes. But some cards just can't handle them for whatever reason. Maybe it's just some kind of codecs that some of the cards support and some don't, or some video chips support and some don't. This integrated chipset, it did not support it. Maybe there's some kind of patch or something, but it's just garbled. But when you get into the gameplay itself, it does work fine. Very smooth, very playable, enjoyable experience. I did get to the hangar scene just to double check if there was any fog or anything like that, and there is not. So it's what I suspected, but I thought it would be fun to try anyways.
Alright, so let's look at some upgrades. First, I am going to max the RAM to 512. That's really not going to affect our performance much at all. But we can, and it's an easy upgrade. And I'm gonna try putting in a discrete video card. So for video card upgrade, the integrated video with the 810 actually performed better than I thought it would, but I want to see how it compares with I guess we could consider this a high-end PCI solution. Now interestingly, as far as PCI cards, I don't have a lot of late 90s period correct PCI cards. I either have really early PCI cards that are like mostly just 2D only, and then I have like later after the year 2000, which are kind of past the era of Windows 98 technically. So I wanted to go with one of those actually, and this is the FX 5200. This is not seen as a good card. As a matter of fact, this is seen as a pretty bad video card. I guess especially the PCI version. Wouldn't recommend it for Windows XP. So this should perform very well in this system with Windows 98. So this does have 256 megabytes of DDR memory. I do have a Voodoo 3 that's a PCI card, and that would be period correct here, and it also would be probably a lot more compatible with games from the time. But like I said, I want to do something a little different. I heard these 5200 cards actually perform really well in Windows 98. So we have VGA, well, two VGA actually, and an S video. Now I believe this is the faster card with the 128 megahertz memory bus as opposed to the 64. And what I was told is you can tell that by the memory chips if you have them in this sort of, I guess, kind of an L, where you have two facing this way and then two the opposite direction. Or that would indicate the 128 memory bus, where is if all of these chips were, like if there were four like this, all pointing the same direction, that would signify it was a 64 memory bus. But we'll see. So I'll install this card and we'll see how it does. So as far as the CPU goes, I don't think I'm going to bother to try to upgrade it. It's the 433 Celeron socket 370. Excuse my pronunciation, it's like the Metagino core, or something along those lines. This should be able to take up to the 533 megahertz Celeron of that same line. And I've read conflicting things on the internet, but it really should be able to take up to the 503 megahertz version of that chip. And if it doesn't, you probably just need to update your BIOS. Even though the 810 chipset is supposedly capable of 100 megahertz front-side bus, I'm not sure if Dell did something to sort of disable that or whatever on this board. I can say that the Pentiums and the later Celerons that use the copper mine core, or the socket 370 Pentiums, do take a lower voltage. So this thing takes 2 volts, and I think those take at the highest like 1.75 volts. And I don't know, I mean, maybe this like auto, down volts it or whatever lowers the voltage. I don't see a jump or anything, but I mean, I could play around and risk throwing a copper mine in here, but I don't think it's going to work. It's not really worth my effort, to be honest. If you have one of these, you want to try it, go ahead, but I suspect it won't work. You might fry something, maybe not. I don't know, but I'm just going to stick with the 433 megahertz Celeron.
So, of course, the first thing we're going to look at here is those synthetic benchmarks, 3D Mark 99 and 3D Mark 2000. Now, 99, although it did okay, there are no graphical glitches or errors or anything, it did actually go slower than the integrated video, at least noticeably slower with the score at the end. Now, the opposite actually happened with 3D Mark 2000, where it actually scored significantly better than 3D Mark 99. Now, there is a resolution difference, and if we look through the games coming up here, it does seem the integrated video does a little better at lower resolution, 800 by 600, whereas the 5200 FX does significantly better at higher resolutions, like 1024 by 768. I suspect, I don't recall off the top of my head just sitting here, but I think the 2000 might utilize some features that aren't present on the integrated 810 video, but are present on the 5200FX, which would give the discrete video card a little bit of an edge in these benchmarks. And here we have expendable at 800 by 616 color mode. And again, there is a little bit of a difference. The integrated video does have a little bit of an edge. This could also be, I believe the integrated video is running on an AGP bus, where the 5200FX is also on PCI bus. I don't know how big of a difference that makes, but in expendable there is a small difference. I think the integrated video of the 810 chipset maybe got an average frame rate of 27 FPS, and with the 5200FX I got an average frame rate of I think 22. So like a 4-5 frame rate difference. Not huge, but detectable. So here's our 5200FX card running in Forsaken. No issues. I didn't really expect any. We're running at 800 by 616 color mode. Also have 8-bit palletized texture enabled, and it's running fine. We're holding between 50 and 60, probably closer to 60. Just fine. This card handles this game just fine, just as well, it seems, as the integrated chipset did. And here we are with that same 5200FX, this time running Forsaken in 1024 by 768, 16 color mode, and again, it's handling the higher resolution quite a bit better than the integrated video, and we're getting, even at this higher resolution, we're still getting frame rates, hovering around 50, but it is better than what we were pulling off with the 810. So yeah, it's pretty much what I expected. If you're doing a lot of things in higher resolution, definitely even on PCI, it seems the discrete video card, at least this 5200FX, is doing quite a bit better at higher resolutions than the integrated video. And here we have the 5200FX in Shadows of the Empire, and I'm happy to report that everything seems to work just fine. It displays the cut screen like FMV scenes perfectly. They're not all messed up and distorted and weird like on the integrated video. And as you can see here, it also displays the fog emulation or the fog table in the game too. So that's another big plus with the 5200FX. It does seem to support more features and abilities than the integrated video.
So this Dell Dimension L series with a Celeron processor in there, what do I think of it? Well, it wouldn't be my first choice for a retro machine, or my second choice, or my third, or my fourth choice, etc., etc. But if you're want for options and this is the only thing you stumble across at the thrift store, or this is what you had in the closet and you wanted to get into retro computer gaming, it will actually suffice. It actually was much more capable than I initially thought. The word limiting does come to mind quickly. You can play early XP games on it. You can load Windows 2000 or Windows XP. It's pretty adequate. I think it mostly excels at the Windows 9X, like Windows 98, 95 era stuff, and you could even do DOS on it. But I think it's limited in all of those respects. The Celeron limits it. This case and the you only have 1 5.25-inch bay limits it. The PCI slots, just like only PCI slots, and then you only have like integrated video. It all limits it, but it can still be made to be adequate. Even stock, it's pretty adequate. I don't usually mess with, I don't really mess with Celerons or usually integrated video. I don't bother with, but it actually performed okay. Now, I only looked at a small handful of games. So, I didn't play 100 games on here to see how well it did and all those. But the ones I did look at is kind of like a general look at, games it would run under Windows 98. It did okay. It did better than I thought. Not spectacular, but better than I thought. The FX5200 did worse than I thought. It did okay. There were some things where the integrated video seemed to beat it. But, generally at higher resolutions, it did okay, and it did seem to have more features, so less glitches with, like, later games and stuff. But,
You could throw in like a PCI, a TNT2, or a Voodoo 3 if you have one, or something like that. Rage 128 want to be more period correct, and you'll probably get good, performance if you're going for that. It depends on your era. If you're going for like Windows 98, and you can adjust your video and sound card options. DOS, the lack of ISA hampers things, but you can get something like a Sound Blaster Live or a Vortex 2 based card, and you get decent sound compatibility. So like, you can make it to be adequate with retro gaming if it's all you have. But it really would not be my first, right? If you have anything better that you can use that. It isn't really special. I guess the one thing I could say is, like, the case is kind of nice and small, so if you're like a little bit have an issue with space, it kind of can hide in the corner, maybe under a desk. It's not too big. Although, even like a mid-size, like even something a little bit taller wouldn't be a big deal. The drive rails is also an annoying issue. Like I said, I never bothered to like find replacements or to like manufacture my own, so it can be done if yours is missing the drive rails. Maybe you can like rig something up, but that is annoying. I always dislike when a system uses the rails. And you got the PSU that's like I think it's proprietary, that aux connector, but apparently you can find adapters on eBay. So Dell Dimension L433c, it's pretty adequate, a little better than I thought it would be. So yeah, there you go. If you like this video, please comment and subscribe. If you have any stories about this machine or anything you would like to add, please add in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.